16, and we are to the last lesson in Module 2 packet today. And that is applications of the Pythagorean theorem. So yesterday, we talked about Pythagorean theorem and what the formula was and how to find the hypotenuse C. So we'll just remind everybody what the formula is. For every right triangle, we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c squared, or where c is the hypotenuse or longest side of the triangle. Today we're going to do the story problems that go with that, and we are also going to learn how to find a and b as well as c. So some little tips for our note writing purposes are this. The first thing we did yesterday, but let's remind ourselves of the steps. So when we're looking to find C, we have to label our sides, then we have to substitute our numbers in for our letters, then we add the values that we get, and finally we take the square root of our final answer there. And that's to find C, and we did that with every question yesterday. Now today, we're going to find A and B in addition to that. So to find A or B now, it's very similar. We're only going to change one part. So find A or B, we're going to do the following, and I'm actually going to write this down here. Again, we're going to label our sides, A, B, or C. Again, we're going to substitute our numbers in where we can. And then we're going to subtract the two values that we get. And we're going to find the square root at the end again. And I will show you an example of what I'm talking about right now. So here's our first example right here, number 1. Use the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing length of the leg in the right triangle. So what you want to do first is follow our directions here. We're going to label these A, B, and C. My hint to you is to label C first. That's the one that is the longest side. So C is right here. Also, another hint is it will be directly across from the right angle. And then the other two are A or B. It doesn't matter what you go with. I like to go in order. Smallest, medium, largest. So A, B, C. Okay, so we labeled. Now we're going to substitute our numbers in according to the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to use our formula, and instead of a squared, we're going to write 15 squared plus b squared is going to stay because we don't know the number for b yet, and c squared is going to become 25 squared. And then you want to use your calculator, or some people might already know what these values are, to figure out your 15 squared and your 25 squared. So 15 squared is 225. You can do that by doing either 15 times 15 or 15 caret 2 plus b squared equals 25 squared, which is 625. Okay? So we've labeled, we've substituted our numbers and simplified them. Now our next thing to do is going to be to subtract. Yesterday we added, but now we're going to subtract because we have to solve an equation here. So we're actually going to subtract 225. I'm only doing it here to cancel it, but what I really want is this right here. I'm going to subtract 225 from here to balance the equation. Now I've got b squared equals 400. And then my last step is to take the square root of that. So now b equals the square root of 400, which equals exactly 20. So b equals 20. Okay. Again, the only difference between today and yesterday is right here. Instead of adding our numbers and then taking the square root, we subtract them to find A or B. Okay, moving on. On the next page, the next part of our notes is going to add some story problems for us that have to do with the Pythagorean theorem. So if you take a look at the next page, we are going to start with the ladder problem. It says you have a 15-foot ladder and need to reach exactly 9 feet up the wall. How far away from the wall should you place the ladder so that you can reach your desired location? Okay, we're going to use our steps again. We're going to start by labeling. The longest side is here, which is C, the 15. I'm going to label this side A right here and this side B. And we're going to use our Pythagorean theorem again. So we don't know what A is. We're going to leave that. A squared plus, instead of B, we're going to use 9. So 9 squared. And instead of C, we'll use 15. Okay, we're going to simplify what we know. We don't know A squared, so we'll leave it. 9 squared is 81. 15 squared is 225. Okay? And again, now we're trying to find A, which means that we have to solve the equation. So we're going to subtract. I only do it here to show you that we are canceling that out. We do it here so we can use the answer to get A squared. A squared now, 225 minus 81, is going to be 144. And your final step, again, to find A is going to be to take the square root of 144, and your answer is 12 exactly. So A equals 12. And to be completely correct, we want to put our unit, which is 12 feet. All right, great. The next type of story problem is not really a story problem. It's just on the graph grid. It says find the length of segment AB. And our problem, we have two problems here. One is we don't have any shape, and two is that we don't have any numbers. So we have to make our own. So we've been working with right triangles. It's easy to make a right triangle using the graph grid here. So I'm going to go ahead and make this into a right triangle by adding 2 lines. You could also go up and over. It will give you the same result in the end. And I'm going to use my steps that I've used for every problem. I'm going to label C is the longest side, and then I'm going to label A and B. And then I need to figure out what are the numbers that I need here. I need at least 2 to use Pythagorean theorem. So the way you're going to get them on a graph grid is count the squares. So A, starting here, 1, 2, 3 units. So A equals 3. And B is 1, 2, 3, 4 units tall. And those are going to be the values I plug into the Pythagorean theorem now. So I'm going to say 3 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared, like that. And I'm going to simplify. 3 squared is 9, plus 4 squared is 16 equals C squared. And this time I'm finding C again. So I'm going to add like we did yesterday. 9 plus 16 is 25. And our final step then is going to be to take the square root of 25, which equals 5, and that is equal to our C, or our length of segment AB is 5 units. Okay, the last thing we're going to do today for the lesson, for the shortened version here, is on the next page. Our last example we'll do is example number 5. And the reason I chose that as our last one is because it's the only one we've had so far that actually there is no picture whatsoever, just words. And there will be 1 or 2 on the unit test that look like this. So it says a right triangle has a hypotenuse of length 13 inches and a leg with length 4 inches. What is the length of the other leg? My hint to you is that if you have a situation with no picture, draw one. Draw one for yourself so that you can give yourself a fighting chance of answering correctly. So this is talking about a right triangle. Pretty easy to draw one of those. Okay. And here's where you need to know the vocabulary. It says it has a hypotenuse of length 13 inches, and we learned earlier that the hypotenuse is the longest side, so this side must be 13 inches. and a leg with 4. I'm going to make it here. You could have done either one. Okay, now you have a picture, and you're going to use your same steps that we've done all lesson long. We're going to label. Longest side is C. We're going to label the other two sides A and B. And we're going to use Pythagorean theorem again. So I have a squared plus 4 squared equals 13 squared. If you simplify, that's a squared plus 16 equals 169. Okay, and then in this case, we want to subtract again because we're trying to find a. We're trying to solve this equation. So I'm subtracting here to cancel. Subtract here so we can use this number. Now we have a squared equals 153. And the final answer, then we need to take the square root of that. And we get a decimal. So when we do this out, our decimal is, and I'll show you on my calculator, 12.3693 blah blah blah. So we're going to round that to the nearest tenth. We get about 12.4 here. It is about 12.4. Okay, whew, that was quite a bit for this last lesson, but everything, that covers everything that's going to be on the test. The homework today starts on page 92, okay? Where it says problem set here, we'll start there. We're going to do numbers 1 through 8. If you have further questions, please feel free to come see me either before school or at lunch, and I will gladly help you.